All right, so next I would like to introduce one of our sponsors, New Relic. Thank you so much for supporting us, and if you'd like to take a minute and tell us why you're here.
Free food.
Well, not quite free, but thank you.
Can I borrow that?
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Foster. I'm a senior developer relations engineer with New Relic. New Relic is proud to sponsor this, a proud sponsor of this event. You will find New Relic sponsoring DevOps days across the country and around the world because engineers are the lifeblood of what we do. The value proposition of New Relic is that we are providing engineers with the telemetry data you need to make intelligent decisions about your tech stack. So for that reason, we think that events like this are very important, not only for you to learn and to grow, but for us to listen to you, find out what's working, what's not, what are your frustrations, because it's literally our job to make your job easier. To learn a little bit more about New Relic or to see a demo, stop by our booth. Make sure you scan the QR code in order to enter to win a free Amazon gift card that we're giving away at the end of the event. And if you want to have a little fun, find out how you can win a PS5 by playing a game. So stop by and talk to us. We'll tell you more about all that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so first up, we're going to have, this afternoon, we're going to have Cameron Stanley from Fleetio talking about how they've evolved their infrastructure. Actually, where's Cameron? Oh, hey, sorry.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cameron Stanley, and today I'm going to be talking about scaling mobile app development. Start off with a little bit about me, why am I giving this talk? I'm currently the engineering manager for the web team at Fleetio. If you're not familiar with Fleetio, it's a local Birmingham-based startup that creates fleet management software. When I joined in 2017, we were around 20 employees based out of the Innovation Depot, if y'all are familiar with that in Birmingham. It's a cool place to start out. And now we're over 200 employees and have an incredible office just across the McWayne Center. And before I transferred over to the web team, I spent the last 6 years building and scaling their mobile app, Fleetio Go. I've got around 12 years experience in the software industry, mainly did a lot of mobile and some Ruby on Rails. And just another little quick fact about me, I recently moved from Birmingham to Phoenix. Spent most of my life in the Southeast though, still consider Birmingham to be my home. I didn't give up my Southern accent yet, but just traded one type of heat for another. And lastly, I would just like to thank DevOps Days for giving me the opportunity to speak today. And putting this conference on. It's my first time giving a talk to this many people, so a little nervous, but yeah, we'll get through it. All right, cool. So today I hope to tell just a condensed version of the past 6 years of my career scaling mobile app development from a small startup to a mid-sized company. I'm going to talk about why is mobile important, some unique challenges with mobile development. And then I'll kind of get into the actual journey that we took of building a mobile app using hybrid versus native frameworks, some tips on hiring that I've learned over the years, mobile app architecture, releases, and CI/CD pipelines. So there will be some DevOps stuff in here too. So while mobile is kind of a niche area of development, I believe the concepts here are applicable in a lot of different industries, and I hope you learned something or at least mildly entertained during my speech. So yeah, why is mobile development important? Quick show of hands, who here has a smartphone? Who here doesn't own a smartphone? Okay, so pretty much everybody, right? When I was in high school, my girlfriend, now wife, had the phone that's in the slides, one of those Nokias. If you had one, you know that they're virtually indestructible. And this was, basically all the phones that we had at that time. Smartphones have obviously changed everything now. Basically, if you look at up here on the slide, 307 million people in the US, that's 92% of the US has a smartphone. 6.92 billion people globally, 86%. I was kind of shocked by those numbers. That many people have those. If you don't have an app these days, you're kind of at a disadvantage in a lot of ways. And so with Fleetio Go, the app that we work on, it really allows us to do more with our business by doing things like barcode scanning, doing inspections, using GPS, using things that are native to the device. So it's really important to have a quality mobile app. Okay. So what are some of the challenges, though, that you run into with mobile development? Device fragmentation. There's a ton of different devices with all sorts of capabilities, and you have to be able to support those. Performance, memory management, and unreliable networks. Smartphones are getting more powerful every year, but at the same time, you still have to make sure that you're building your apps in a performant way, because you don't have, you don't have as much computing power as you might think. Dependency on the App Store and Google Play for releases. So an interesting thing is if you want to push an app out and have it be available in the store, it's got to get approved by Apple or Google, so it has to fit their guidelines. But then also, if you run into a problem, you can't just throw a switch and immediately get a new version out to fix it. So you have to put some fail-safes in place to counteract that. Also, you have to worry about users not upgrading their app version or OS. Just some people just don't do it for whatever reason. My wife is one of those people, and there's also a kind of a fundamental shift that everyone at your organization will have to make when you're building out a mobile app, especially to make it not feel like a web page. It's just a hard concept a lot of time for people to kind of get in their head that mobile, the interaction with it, the UX is much different than web. And just to drive the point home on device fragmentation, this is just a breakdown of like Apple's got the main market share, but then there's all these different other manufacturers, and they all have a ton of devices for each of those. So that's a lot of different devices you got to support. So yeah, now I'm going to talk about hybrid versus native. So when we first built Fluidio Go, we made the decision to use a hybrid framework called Ionic. So basically, like what a hybrid framework is it lets you create an iOS and an Android app from a shared code base. Being a small startup, it just made sense for us to save some time and effort to get our app to market quick. We then made the decision to upgrade to Ionic 2, which was kind of a big redesign that we packaged along with it. And then over time, it became more and more clear that we needed to move to native iOS and Android with Swift and Kotlin. At the end of the day, these frameworks are just a means to an end, and it's up to you to decide which tool makes the most sense for where your product is at. So yeah, hybrid frameworks. What are some of the pros and cons of those? And just a few of these, if you haven't heard of them before: Ionic, Xamarin, React Native, Apache Cordova. Flutter is kind of a special category. I actually like that one a lot. But yeah, they're a single code base. They're fast, they're good for MVPs, and there's a low barrier to entry on them, and they take advantage of existing developer skills. Some of the cons are performance, because you're running inside of like a web view or some other container that's not actually the way that Apple or Google are basically kind of optimizing for. The UX can be a little off sometimes. Getting native functionality can be a little bit more difficult. And then it can also be some problems with hiring difficulties at scale. So yeah, native. Why would you use native? It's easier to take advantage of native capabilities like push notifications, getting access to the camera, doing things with memory. You've got improved performance, better UI, UX. You're getting the latest and greatest that the frameworks are putting out. And then the tooling is a little better around it, or at least a little bit more evolved and specialized for it. Some of the cons, I mean, you've got multiple code bases, so you've got to have more developers to support that. It's evolving constantly. If you've heard, like Swift Kotlin, now we're going to Swift UI and Jetpack Compose. And the hiring can be a bit more specialized to get an iOS dev or an Android dev. So lastly, I was just going to point out too, we built the app in a hybrid framework. We went native, but then there's this new thing that came out called Kotlin multi-platform. And it's kind of coming full circle again. It allows you to share code between iOS and Android. So you can still have some business logic or some functionality without writing the entire app in a hybrid framework, which is really helpful. So yeah, now that we have a fully native app, So we rewrote it, and now we need to hire more developers, right? So up until this point, I was just a sole dev, and now that we have multiple code bases, I need to build out a team. So I did hundreds of interviews, hired a really great team, and here's a few of the tips that I've learned along the way. So yeah, with hiring, you want to ask the right questions in interviews. You want to definitely look for a certain level of technical competency, but then you also want to get into how are they going to fit in with the rest of the team? How are they going to be someone who's easy to work with? Are they going to be a high trust employee? Culture is key. You want to make sure that the person that you're hiring is going to fit in with your culture and also just help improve that and add to it and not take away. I like to stay away from leak code for assessments. I favor real world projects instead. The main reason behind that is like, it's not a good gauge of your skill level. So if you're just writing, FizzBuzz type stuff, that doesn't prove that you can build an app. So definitely recommend that. And then the first few hires are critical to get right. And we lucked out. We got some really great people as our first hires. And this last point on here, looking for high performance, high trust, favor trust over performance. I'll get into that on my next slide. Sorry. So there's this graph. There's a guy named Simon Sinek. He does a lot of business books and stuff, but he popularized this chart. He actually did this with Navy SEALs, I think is where he got the example from. But basically, you've got two axes, performance and trust. We as companies, we tend to look at the performance metric. That's an easy thing to track, right? Like, here's your numbers, here's your quota, are you hitting those? But what we don't look for is the trust factor, and that's basically how is that employee contributing to the rest of the team and fitting in with them and basically like contributing positively. So just one thing to look out for is like you definitely don't want to get someone on the top left square of there. I would definitely look for someone who's more on the lower performance side but higher trust, because that's something that you can work with them on and you can get them to perform higher. But having low trust is very difficult to work around. And yeah, on the topic of hiring, we are hiring at Fluidio. We just had a new position open up for an IT help desk role. So if you're interested, come check out the careers page. When we're not building fleet management software, we're doing fun things like going to the skate park here in Birmingham or having video game nights. So definitely come check us out. So yeah, now at this point, we've got a team. Sorry. So now we need to make our code base scalable, more easy to work with. So the best advice that I can give you is to just try and follow what Apple and Google are pushing. And I know this sounds kind of naive, but it really has worked out the best for us. You don't want to do this too quickly, because a lot of time they like to push things out and make you a beta tester and you don't have all the functionality you need, but you will have faster access to newer features and capabilities. It'll be more performant. The OS is always optimized for whatever Google and Apple are building. You'll have an easier time with onboarding and hiring and developer happiness, because as devs, we like to kind of work inside of the industry approved tech stack. So yeah, just a quick rundown of how we architected things and the journey we took on the iOS side. So back in the day, Apple really pushed just straight MVC, and that worked out fine for a while, but that does lead to, instead of model view controller, it leads to massive view controllers. You get a lot of bloated code inside of your view controller, and it gets really difficult to work with. So the next logical step that we went to is what's called model view model, and then an abstraction on top of that is to add coordinators, and that basically just allows you to better segment out your business logic into a view model, and so it's not so bloated, and the coordinator helps out with performing segues and launching view controllers. And then lastly, we've been making a push to Swift UI. I would caution you against doing it unless you can target iOS 14 and 15, because like my last point on the slide, they kind of had the first version of Swift UI be a bit of a beta test for iOS 13 users. So Android, similar thing. Went activities with fragments, and then went to NavGraph. We tried to do a single activity app, and then just pared that down to using the NavGraph like Android recommended. With MVVM, use live data. Now we're using Kotlin flows, and we pretty much just follow what is recommended by Google Code Labs. And we've been making this this jump to Jetpack Compose. So Jetpack Compose, SwiftUI are kind of in tandem the new hot way to build apps. So finally, the last point I was going to make about architecting your app is, from the last few slides, it should be apparent that things move really quick in the mobile world. The framework of today is going to be gone in tomorrow, and so it's probably a good idea to not over-engineer your code base, because you're probably going to throw it away anyways. The comic up here kind of summarizes what we found a lot of the time. So yeah, a lot of time what you will build, if you stick with Apple and Google, it will work until it doesn't, and then it's time to move on to something else. But for the most part, we haven't really run into that issue. So yeah, let's get into some DevOps stuff. When I was just a solo developer, I used to just push releases to the app stores manually. This took, I don't know, probably 15-20 minutes just sitting at my laptop, just pushing buttons and waiting for things to run. I discovered this cool tool though called Fastlane, and what Fastlane does is it lets you script out and automate the entire build process for mobile. And so you can see that little snippet up there, it's got Fastlane, that tools just save you 28 minutes. When I got that to work successfully, it takes a little bit to get it up and running, but once I got that running, it was a good day because it saved me a lot of time. So cool thing about Fastlane is you can integrate that in with your CI solution. So we use Circle CI. Basically, anytime that we push a PR up to GitHub, we get a job that kicks off that can deploy things for us using Fastlane. So it's a really good tool to have if you're in the mobile world. And then finally, Runway. This is another abstraction on top of the CI/CD pipeline. This gets into more of like release management, but it's a really good tool that we found, and definitely thought I'd throw that out there. And then finally, Firebase. If you're doing anything with builds where you need QA or product to look at your test builds that are going out, Firebase is a great tool. It does more than just app distribution, but it also is really good for push notifications, cloud storage, all sorts of good stuff. Yeah. So now that we've got kind of a CI/CD pipeline, we need to start putting some processes in to make things more reliable. And so there's this idea of chaos engineering. I was introduced to this by Netflix, but chaos engineering is intentionally trying to break your system, figure out where your weak points are. Netflix built a tool called Chaos Monkey. It basically just runs on, they run it on their infrastructure, and it tries to break things and see what happens. We don't actually use this tool at Fleetio, but I think the idea is really sound in that it's really good for you to, things are going to go wrong, not if, but when. It's a good idea to know what's going to happen when those things do go wrong. There's also another thing that we try to do is just limit the blast radius whenever you have problems. So some things that we do is we perform like a risk assessment every time that we do a release. So we'll look at all the things that are in there. We'll basically pull up a Git log, see all of the commits that were in there, and figure out from those and those tickets what things could potentially cause problems. Having a good rollback plan. So that's if we do identify like a strong enough reason to pull a build out, how do you do that? And does everyone on the team know how to execute that? Phase rollouts are a really good tool. You could use these on the web as well, and we do on our web app. But basically, you can see in the screenshot, you roll out on a daily basis and you go to a larger percentage of your user base. Apple gives you this functionality out of the box. And I believe Google is too, but they let you configure it more. But it's a really strong tool for just if you do identify a problem, it won't be the entire user base that is being affected by it, which is really good. And then finally, utilizing feature flags. We've been investigating a tool called Launch Darkly. We've had some version of feature flags in for a while now using Firebase. But essentially what feature flags let you do is take parts of your functionality in your app and you can turn them on or off remotely and for certain sections of your code base. And then finally, one other thing that we did is we implemented this concept of a release train. This was Spotify's, they really pushed this a bunch. But essentially, what it does is that you release every week on the same day. So you'll have a code cutoff, and then you'll have a round of QA that happens. And then if everything looks good on that build, the build gets submitted. It goes through the phase rollout, and then you basically restart the cycle. We do this every week, and so we're constantly pushing code out. What this gives you is you get a weekly cadence. There's no surprises about when is the build going out. It's always just if the thing's ready, it goes in the release. If not, it goes next week. It's more reliable in that you always know what to expect. It forces you to keep your master or develop branch in a ready state because you can automate, or we've automated our release train to where it will kick off a build at the same time every week. And it is really important though to get your testing down. You need to have both some form of manual and automated regression testing. And feature flags are also really important for this because if you're pushing something out and you have, it's maybe product is wanting you to wait on it, you can at least still keep it in the release train and still launch it and then turn it on whenever you want. And yeah, this is just a quick, this is probably difficult to see on this calendar view, but this is just how we kind of organize our release train, where Wednesdays we'll do a code cutoff, and then we have a round of QA on Thursdays and Fridays, and then we submit the build to Apple for review, and then the following Tuesday we release, and we follow a phased rollout throughout the week, and the cycle just repeats every week. And yeah, that's the end of my talk. Any questions? Yeah. No, that's a great question. So it happens for sure. We pull builds out all the time, but I'd say I think last year we ended up with like 47 releases, so 46 or 47 out of 52, and we took a little time off for the holidays as well. So it's pretty consistent, and it does help out to have if you need to pull it out, you can. If not, then you roll with it. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, well, cool. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Oh, one more? Oh, I'm sorry.
What's the process and timeline if you need to roll back a release or put in an update that's not on schedule? Do you just wait for the next weekly, or do you have a process in place?
Yeah, it depends on the severity of it. So like if you identify a problem in your phase rollout, and it's going to impact enough users, you just halt the release, and then if we need to, we'll immediately put in a hotfix if it's like a P1 or a P2 type issue. If not, it can usually just roll to the next week. But yeah, we just we kind of have to just play it by ear and just see like how bad is it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all.
Big round of applause. Thank you all. Thanks, Cameron.
Thank you.